It's 3 o'clock. Are we live? All right. Thank you very much. So I will call the June 28th, 2022 regular council meeting to order and do the land acknowledgement that the city of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nahiawak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux and Métis. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Thank you. So with that, the first item of business is the approval of the minutes of June 14th, 2022. Councillor Macon.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes from the June 14th, 2022 regular council meeting.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions?
Nope.
Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. There are no delegations that I'm aware of that have registered to be here. So we will get right into business of presentations for the business survey results. So we have Mark Morrissey, Economic Development in person, and Sean Goodeve, who will be joining us online from Deloitte. So welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. As stated, my name is Mark Morrissey. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Fort Saskatchewan. And joining me is Sean Goodeve, a manager with Deloitte. So earlier this year, the administration undertook a business survey, and we used the services of Deloitte to engage with the businesses within the city to get a sense of where they sit, where their concerns are, to understand what the city is doing well and where we can improve the services we provide the business community. Moving forward, we provided Deloitte with a list of the licensed businesses within the city, of which they did their random sampling and then proceeded to do the survey. And we are presenting the results here for you this afternoon. So with that, I will pass things over to Mr. Goodeve to go through the results as they've determined them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrissey. Madam Chair, is it okay if I present at this time?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. It's very nice to see you again, Mayor Catcher, and other members of council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the business survey with you today. As Mr. Morrissey indicated, my name is Sean Goodeve, and I'm with Deloitte. I joined this project actually kind of at the tail end of the project, and so my colleagues Chris Bandak and Simon Webb were not able to join today, but it is my pleasure to be here and to present on this business survey very briefly. I realize we have just a limited amount of time allocated. The short version is that this is certainly the results from the survey. There certainly is a good news story, both for the for administration, for council, and for the community overall, in terms of the findings within the business survey. Notwithstanding that, of course, there's an identification of other businesses that are on the outliers of that and who do require additional support. So we're going to go through the a little briefly in terms of the methodology here. Then we'll get into the findings. And Mr. Morrissey is advancing the slides for me. Thank you, sir. As we've already indicated, Ms. Morrissey noted, this is the intent of the survey was to certainly kind of get an understanding of, what's going on with the business community at this time. The survey, Mark, you may advance the next one, please. The survey was a random sampling of the business licenses that were provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan. We had 100 businesses were surveyed by telephone. Out of a sample size of 720. And as you can see, we had a very strong, about 15% response rate. So overall, it's very strong and very solid in terms of the analysis and the statistical validity of the survey itself. Advance 2 slides, please, there. Thank you very much. This slide just indicates and kind of shows the overall kind of ownership composition within the community. As you can see there on the ownership column there on the left-hand side, the majority are locally owned and operated, and as well you can see that the composition is in large part small to medium-sized enterprises within the community based on the number of employees. Next slide, please. In terms of where these businesses, who their client market is, and it's really predominantly local and also regional. But again, so about 75% are local, which again really kind of speaks to the interconnectedness within businesses. An interesting element here in terms of the bar graphic is just how many businesses are well established. So we're looking at that 6 years and beyond, more than 10 years. I think we're sitting at 41% in that regard. But again, speaking to and looking at the entrepreneurial element or aspect of the community, it's those businesses are less than 5 years, and of course, we kind of consider those within kind of the startup or a bit of an interesting zone, interesting time for them, and certainly starting up for some of those during COVID as well. We can see that's about 7% with less than 1 year. Slide, please. This slide just gives us an understanding, gives the city an understanding in terms of whether or not the businesses are renting or owning. You can see at this time there is more 58% are renting, and as we drill down a little tighter, this is important for for Mr. Morrissey and his team to kind of give more consideration to. I'll speak a little bit further in the within the presentation today about the red flags and green flags. We call them red flags. The color has a misnomer to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but they're just red flags are indicators for us of businesses that should have follow up with the Economic Development Department or with the city. And certainly when we look at the term of the lease, when those leases expire, those would be elements that would be included within a red flag. So again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Is this something you want to monitor through the Economic Development Department? Next, we'll get into the overall business performance. You can see here the first question looked at the overall revenues. And you can see in the, that overall there's it's pretty strong in terms of the businesses that saw either an increase in revenues or that their revenues remain the same. And again, I think we're just talking about over 70% there. As we look into the next element of it, excuse me, in terms of the expectations or forecasting for the next year, there's strong optimism. Again, that would be the green bar, the green band there that you see. There's strong optimism that the revenues will improve year over year, and others businesses indicated to be about the same. And finally, in terms of their overall attitude towards doing business with the community, it's very strong. With a net positive here of 25%. Again, a really strong indication that businesses are happy doing work in Fort Saskatchewan. And further to that, we'll show some other slides here that help to kind of support that evidence. Now, the Net Promoter, as you can see, this is really interesting. The question was here, I would recommend the city to another business looking to expand or relocate. And as I'm sure members of council are aware, that is a really important aspect in terms of investment attraction. Oftentimes, when businesses are considering locating or expanding within a community, they're talking to other business owners and they're asking them their thoughts, and they're kind of getting a sense in terms of what that community is like to do business. So having a really strong promoter score here in terms of the community recommendation of 88% is really exceptional. The only, I guess, kind of piece of work in the future might be, moving that somewhat agree metric into strongly agree. But overall, it's a very strong indication that that there is strong support. And then we'll get into the Net Promoter next, please. Thank you. So again, this is back on the recommendation element in terms of whether or not they would recommend to another business, and this is we call this the Net Promoter. These businesses that are willing to advocate and to act as ambassadors to attract new business or have a business expand. You can see here, we're up 36%, which is a very strong Net Promoter score. Next, we get into KPIs. This is an interesting one. This is overall in terms of the satisfaction with the local businesses, just in regards to owning and operating a business in the city of Fort Saskatchewan. Again, a very, very high. This is probably one of the highest KPIs that we've actually seen in doing numerous studies across Canada. In the same vein of these business surveys, so you're sitting at 97%. So again, this is a good news story both for council and staff and the business community at large. So let's get into overall kind of satisfaction levels. And this is where we're really going to get into more specifics to start drilling down in terms of, what are these various factors that, impact businesses and the viability of businesses within the community. As you can see, the very satisfied and satisfied responses are quite high. We're looking at 100% in terms of, availability of water and cell phone use. So some of these kind of, infrastructure elements, core infrastructure. It's certainly looking at, probably members in the planning department, we look at this favorably as well. But in terms of, zoning, certainly from council's perspective, I think we have 84% response in terms of municipal property taxes. That's typically higher than what we would see. Usually those would be pain points for businesses, but we're seeing higher numbers. The one that was lower, and we're going to see this in another slide as well, is just the availability of skilled labor. And you can see it sits about 64%. So when we look at that, that's obviously, labor and labor shortages are affecting communities across Canada. But this is certainly an opportunity for action in terms of, initiatives with the Economic Development Department going forward. So next, we're going to get into derived importance and priority matrix. I know we're a little limited on time, so I'm just going to share with you in terms of how we get to this understanding around derived importance and how we can then provide priority and action items for the municipality to kind of work on in the future. What you're seeing here is just for demonstration purposes, and what we have is two different factors. The top factor is looking at skilled labor. Again, this is just an example, not related to my last slide. And then cell phone use. So when you see the skilled labor, as it moves back and forth between the satisfaction level of being satisfied and very satisfied, it has a high impact. It impacts quite highly on the KPI. Whereas with the cell phone use, as it slides back and forth between that spectrum of not satisfied to very satisfied, it has a very low impact on the KPI. So therefore, the skilled labor would have a much higher derived importance than cell phone use. And so this is how we calculate derived importance, and certainly how we recommend on priority, the priority matrix going forward. And I see there's some additional information on this slide if council would like to look at that later. Needless to say, when we're looking at those overall community factors, it's not necessarily always the case where the satisfaction level would be, ranking so high. Again, it's about that formulaic of looking at, how do we kind of get to that derived importance. But in this case, there was an alignment between, the satisfaction level and the availability of skilled labor. So it ranks quite high in the priority list, which is the final column there. You can see the priorities 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of these factors, you can see that, there's very little ability for the municipality to affect. We're certainly looking at provincial roads and highways. Outside of advocacy, perhaps with the ministry, there's really little opportunity for the city itself to kind of affect some change. However, there's other items here that are takeaways for Mr. Morrissey and his team to then look at how they can allocate resources and time and prioritize exactly what is required to ensure that local businesses are supported by the city itself. The Business Community Health Index, we can move to the next slide as well, please. This is a cluster. These are various factors that obviously impact, the businesses, the business community, and it really kind of looks at in terms of these are, you can see these kind of like 9 buckets that we use, where the questions within the survey would have been themed within these buckets. And you can kind of probably see that coming through in terms of community recommendation, future satisfaction, or overall satisfaction and future plans. What we do from this, though, is that we then benchmark these questions that we've asked within the survey, and then we look at that more broadly, across Canada. And as we'll see in the next slide, we can see where Fort Saskatchewan scored. So these green lines represent the responses from the individual businesses. You can see there the national 5-year average is 750. And the city of Fort Saskatchewan far exceeded that and far outperformed that. This is by far one of the highest highest numbers we've seen in terms of this community business health index, and it's a real testament again to the work within the the city itself and administration and council, and just in terms of being responsive and understanding what it is the business community needs, and then doing your best to to help them out to ensure that they're being successful within the community itself. So again, this is a really great news story in terms of the overall score here of 810. As we get into the survey and we start asking questions around future projections for the local businesses, this is where we start getting into that the triage element of the survey of this particular product. And this is an opportunity when we look at this particular slide of, again, how to best allocate staff time and resources, which businesses to focus on, which businesses need help, which businesses are in a state of growth and they're looking to kind of move. So we can see we have 20 businesses in total that plan to expand. And 6 of those are planning to do so quite rapidly in the next 6 months. So it's understanding, what are their expansion plans? What are their expansion, what are the requirements in terms of location, whether it's vacant land or, lease space, and then how best for the Economic Development Department to facilitate that, to, help to locate those businesses in the right location based on, their current inventory. In a similar fashion, at the farther end of the scale here, we can see plans to sell. Okay, well, there's 2 businesses that have indicated that they're planning to sell. That's a follow-up action item then for the economic development part to understand exactly, what's going on behind the scenes here. Is this just a natural secession of the company? Perhaps the owners have just decided that it's time to sell, or are there some other factors going on here? So this again provides very clear opportunity in terms of businesses to contact directly through this project. And as we'll see on the next slide, this is where we get into this grouping of the green flag and red flag. And again, red flag's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just looking at, these are items that, they've identified, or their responses indicated that it'd be important that there was follow-up back from Mr. Morrissey and his team to connect directly with those businesses. And as you can see, it ranges from everything, as I talked about earlier, from month-to-month leases all the way through to selling or closing. And these are specific questions that were asked within the community. And again, it's trying to get an understanding in terms of, the initiatives and programs, through the Economic Development Department, and then how these relate back to the businesses. So, the familiarity about various business incentives and programs. It's at 28%. So there's probably an opportunity here for further outreach and awareness building within the businesses to ensure that they're aware of these various programs. But again, we need to kind of keep in mind perhaps the programs that are out there may not relate to those businesses. Again, we have a lot of businesses within the community that are well established, that have been in operation for over 10 years. So maybe these incentives and programs are not of value to them at this time. So we asked this next question on the next slide here, which is really kind of looking at what would be of value? What type of program, what type of assistance? How can the city help out in terms of whether directly kind of offering these programs or looking for other partnerships or other organizations that may offer this type of training or type of grants that the city can kind of connect them with. So we see non-repayable small business grants, roadsides and advertising programs, focus on the downtown businesses, and incentives for local purchasing. These were kind of ranking in terms of the potential programming, which again is an opportunity for further consideration for the economic development team. And this is always of issue for any community. It's how best to communicate. In this case, how best to communicate with the business community. And as you can see here, overwhelmingly, the response was that social media. It's Twitter and Facebook, and receiving information through those channels is very positive. But right on the heels of that, at 46%, is word of mouth. and that's quite interesting, and then tapers off, from there from local newspapers and email, in local televisions and in ad sources. So again, this really helps going back in terms of the city's communication back to the business community, what's going to be effective and what's going to reach the businesses, and how best to communicate with them. So with that being said, that's my last slide. As you can see, it's not my contact information there, it's my colleagues, but for more specific follow-up, I'm happy to address any questions you have, and if I'm not able to address it, I'm happy to have one of my colleagues follow up with you directly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. So I will ask council if they have any questions of yourself or Mr. Morrissey. So Councillor Blizzard, you're first.
Sure. Thanks for the presentation. Couple of questions. Were all businesses contacted, or did you stop at 100?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Blizzard, all a complete list of business licenses within the city were provided to Deloitte. The sample size that they used is 100. So only 100 were, I think maybe more than 100 were invited, but they did work to get to 100 responses.
And so those 100, are we sure that it's a cross-section? Like, do they kind of target some of the small business, bigger business, downtown, highway?
Through your Worship, without getting into the specifics of their process, I'm not familiar with that. I think Mr. Goody could answer that. The only direction the city provided in terms of the sample size itself was to try and be as reflective of the business community as possible. We felt it not prudent to kind of contact large industry within the region. We just didn't feel that this was applicable to them. But then beyond that, we just asked that it be as representative as possible.
Okay, thanks. And one more, it was more of a, I don't know if it's a question so much as a comment, but in the priorities, it was interesting that the cell phone use was very high on, we're good, and water, but the skilled labor was at the bottom. And yet when you go to priorities, the skilled labor was at the top. Interesting, because if all of a sudden you didn't have cell phone or didn't have water, that would probably change, right? It's kind of reflective of, if you have lots of skilled labor, then you're not so concerned about it. But because it's low, it would be high on their priority, right? Is that
correct? Yes. So as businesses kind of indicated that it is of major concern to them, it does rise on the priority list. Of course, all of these things are fairly interconnected, so one will have an impact on the other in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, thanks. That's all. Good presentation.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Abatoye, questions? Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My first question is regarding the BCHI. It's really nice to see how highly ranked that Fort Saskatchewan came. But my question is, the results, was it just based on the response that you got from the business owners? Because that would seem highly subjective to me. Were there other real indices, some sort of objective indices that were used for this index?
I would defer that to Mr. Goody, as it's their process. So.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor, that's an excellent question. Those the questions that we were asked throughout the survey, these are benchmarked against that Community Health Business Index, as you indicated, and so these questions are standardized. It is based on their responses, and it's probably one of those valuable element in terms of trying to understand, business needs directly from the business owners themselves. So I hope that addresses your question. But again, as we noted through the presentation, that score of 810, if I recall correctly, is quite exceptional, and it's certainly something that the community can be proud of, and perhaps, in addition, that could be utilized, in other kind of, promotional efforts, or, communicating with other businesses that are looking to locate within the city of Fort Saskatchewan.
All right, great, thank you. My second question is to Mr. Morrissey. So it seems that there's an adequate awareness of our grant programs. What are we doing to ensure that business owners know about it? And I think one easy way that comes to mind is when people are registering for their licenses, do we get that information to them? Because 20% seems like a very low number.
Your Worship, to Councillor Abatoye, yeah, that was one of the key takeaways for us. While these numbers are very encouraging and they look great, There are some takeaways, as we alluded to, that being one of them. We are not currently providing information with the license package, but it is an option we are actively considering moving forward. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have just one question for you, and it's regarding the slide that showed the 44 and I think the 41 or whatever it was to get us to 88%. Do you drill down on that to actually ask why a business may just fall into the category of, we're somewhat satisfied? Because if they're renters, could that have the impact? Or, do you drill down on that? And do you have any response of what maybe some of the reasons were?
I'll provide a response to my ability, and then Mr. Goody can fill in any blanks. But in terms of drilling down, we are provided at the end with the detailed log of responses. Most businesses that were surveyed did give permission to pass along their responses, so it does give us a bit of an opportunity to kind of dive in and look and see what their actual responses were. So it's not a yes or a no. There are some context provided. So we can go in and take a look. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything available right now, but I don't know if Mr. Goodeve has anything to add in terms of the process. So,
thank you, Mr. Morrissey. To address your question, Mayor, it's the satisfaction element. I mean, it is kind of something that may be perceived as very subjective, right? For the business to say, "Oh, I'm satisfied," or somewhat satisfied. However, it's the formulation of the questions and how we compose these business surveys. So we ask additional other questions that can kind of cross-validate and kind of give us a better understanding in terms of what's going on. As Mr. Morrissey indicated, the full list of responses for those businesses that we're willing to share, are available. So it allows the city to kind of conduct some follow-up. But again, we've kind of looked at those various priority items, and we can kind of see in terms of what's happening there in terms of the big pain point right now is that definitely in terms of that skilled labor, and then overwhelmingly there's very high satisfaction of not just doing business within the community, but actually recommending it to others in terms of expansion and relocation. So again, I think there's a lot of really good news stories here for you.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm not seeing any additional questions, so I will thank you, Mr. Goodeve and Mr. Morrissey, for being here this evening and providing that. I think it does speak volumes for our community, and hopefully we can continue to, be a place to attract business to. So great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to the next item, which is 5.1, the 2023 to 2032 10-year capital plan update. And it's my understanding that this is being presented as a current draft, and that be allowed to ask questions to familiarize ourselves, but we're not actually debating or putting projects in. This is just strictly for information and feedback, correct?
Yeah, through your worship, it is our recommendation for council to debate this obviously in the fall with the budget session, but we didn't want to just walk it in there. We wanted council to have an advanced look at what the recommendations would be and the draft in advance of that. So. Okay.
And being that we don't have a committee of whole in July, so there will be some latitude given for not just questions, but for some feedback as well. Okay. So welcome. So we have Mr. Eamon and Shannon Andruko. So welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Shannon Andruko, Senior Accountant, Financial Services, and with me is Jeremy Eamon, Chief Financial Officer. This afternoon, I'll present an update on the 2023-2032 10-year capital plan, changes to spending priorities, retired debt, debenture borrowing rates, and an overview of various revisions and notes to the 10-year capital plan since Council adopted the 2022 10-year capital plan in December of 2021. Also, Council can consider the proposed changes in the 10-year capital plan and provide feedback. Administration will consider the potential changes in the capital plan for presentation to Council in October. The 2022-2032 capital plan is a flexible plan. It's a multi-year planning tool that the city uses to plan and track for its investments in capital assets. This plan also tracks a horizon list for capital projects not currently within the 10-year capital plan. The capital plan also incorporates the goals and initiatives of the strategic plan, as well as other multi-year plans, studies, which are cross-referenced in the notes provided within the document. The capital plan is prepared in coordinates with the Operating and Capital Budget Policy and the Municipal Government Act. The primary focus of the capital plan is to support critical infrastructure and equipment maintenance, service levels, and respond to the community's future needs. The plan also addresses future replacement of aging assets. The capital plan, as it sits now, includes $311 million in total proposed project spending for 2023 through to 2032. This includes approximately $277 million in city-led projects and $34 million in developer levy projects. There are various revisions in the 10-year capital plan since Council last seen it. Revisions of the 10-year capital plan include revised start dates and budgets, new projects, and removal of some projects. Starting off with engineering structures. Veterans Way Corridor is a 5-year project, which was reintegrated into the 10-year capital plan, with phases 1 and 2 scheduled for 2023 and 2024, respectively. The remaining phases are scheduled for 2029 to 2031. The consideration of reintegrating the Veterans Way Corridor into the 10-year capital plan was due to the Dow Canada's construction plan for 2026 and 2027, which is forecasted to create 6,000 to 7,000 jobs during their peak construction timeframe. The total budget increased from $20.9 million to $22.8 million. Veterans Way pedestrian crossing north and south are both reintegrated to align with Veterans Way corridor widening phases 1 in 2023 and phases 3 in 2029. The total cost to construct the north and south pedestrian crossing increased from $8.6 million to $9.7 million. The secondary alternative water source is budgeted at $14.5 million in the 23 capital plan. A reduction from from $15 million in 2022's capital plan. In April of 2022, Council approved $500,000 for a functional planning study. Traffic calming is a new project added to the plan for 2023 and 2024, budgeted at $300,000 per year. And finally, the Legacy Park performance stage refurbishment was moved from the 10-year capital plan and placed on the horizons list as the project details need to be refined. Moving on to equipment replacements. Equipment life cycle replacements. Information technology network infrastructure replacement budget was adjusted for costs and timing of the life cycle replacements. The costs were adjusted primarily due to breaking out the new IT infrastructure from the life cycle program. The new additions to the IT infrastructure includes the Dow Centennial Center security camera system scheduled for 2023, the network core switches for city facilities scheduled for 2024 and 2025, the Windsor Point Lift Station SCADA network connection scheduled for 2024, and the network and security redundant fiber optic line scheduled for 2025. Protective services lifecycle replacement timing was adjusted to align with current needs. Harbor pool equipment lifecycle replacement for 2026 budget was adjusted to include replacement of lockers. The Dow Centennial lifecycle replacement for the 2023 was moved to 2024. This is due to a current assessment on the Dow Centennial's equipment. Fire equipment lifecycle replacement budgets within the capital plan were adjusted due to a review of the fire equipment. A few items were identified as operational in nature and therefore moved to the operating budget. Annual fleet and equipment lifecycle replacement budget in 2024 increased by $740,000. This is due to a loader replacement with an upgrade. Vehicles, machinery, and equipment. The Smart Internet Intersection System, this is a new project added for 2023 with a budget of $200,000. Also, there are a few new additions to the city's fleet and equipment, which include a tool cat with a bucket, budgeted in 2024 for $110,000, wing attachments budgeted in 2026 for $37,500, and a 5-ton tandem truck and dump trailer budgeted in 2027 for $400,000. And finally, the utility operator customer service truck was removed from the capital plan. It was originally budgeted for 2023. At this time, there's no plan for a new utility operator. Buildings. The fire station and the aquatics planning and construction budgets were increased, resulting in a projected budget of $20 million and $46 million, respectively. Parks, Satellite Building, and the West River's Edge Community Facility was moved from the capital plan to the the horizon list, as the project details need to be refined. Land and land improvements. Fort Center Park Phase 1 budget was adjusted to align with a new project scope, which is to include a natural area. The budget increased from $1.5 million to $2.1 million. A columbarium is a new project added to the 10-year capital plan for 2023. And the Cemetery Master Plan Area 1, Phase 1, was moved from 2024-26 to 2025-27 to align with the completion of the Ross Creek study in 2024. This study will help inform the cemetery's development in adjacent lands. West River's Edge Trail and Family Play Area were moved from the 10-year capital plan to the Horizons list, as project details need to be refined. And finally, the cemetery concrete runners was removed from the 10-year capital plan. However, this project will be brought back to the capital plan after the completion of the Cemetery Plan Area 1 Phase 1 project is completed. On May 24, 2022, Council adopted and revised the operating and capital budget policy, which formally establishes the Horizons list to track capital projects not currently within the 10-year capital plan for the following reasons, but not limited to: no capital funding source, insufficiently refined scope, cost, or business case. The Horizon list will be reviewed annually. The movement from the Horizon list for inclusion into the capital plan will use the same framework as major capital projects as established in the operating capital budget policy. The framework includes an evaluation and planning process as identified in the policy and an interim and final budget approvals by council. Currently, the capital plan has several potential projects awaiting for project details, refinement. Some examples of the types of projects on the Horizon list are the Harbor Pool, repurpose or demolition, major infrastructure projects to service the annex lands, 100th Ave redevelopment through Legacy Park, enterprise resource planning, 100th Street local road enhancement, and Legacy Park enhancement from the NDP, to name a few. So over the next few months, administration will be working through various initiatives, such as the developer levy bylaw, which is currently under review. It is expected that the results of the offsite levy bylaw will be presented to council in either the fall of 22 or early 2023. With that being said, the timing of the levy projects and costs are subject to change from what's currently in the 10-year capital plan. We will continue to fine-tune the Horizon list. The Recreation, Infrastructure, and Neighborhood Rehabilitation Program studies are underway and will inform future projects for the 10-year capital plan. Refinement of funding strategies for 2023 and the 10-year capital plan, and forecast future debt limits and debt servicing and its impact on operations, and continue to further understand what the local government physical framework funding means to the city in 2024. The Dow Centennial Center's debenture expires in 2023. There are two options for this retired debt. The first option is to retire the debt, which means the debt's ongoing funding will be removed from the 2024 budget. The second option is to redirect the debt to ongoing funding to the capital projects reserve for other major capital projects within the 10-year capital plan, such as the neighborhood rehab. This option also helps stabilize future property tax rates. Administration is recommending option 2 to redirect the DCC debt funding to the capital projects reserve. However, further discussion will happen during the 2024 budget process. In December of 2021, the province announced revisions to the interest rates on new debt. The revisions reflect market cost of borrowing. Historically, municipalities were provided with low interest rates by the province. The result of the interest rate revision, as provided by the province, increases the interest rate payments by approximately 0.5% to 7.75% on new debt. As for next steps, administration will take back any feedback from this afternoon and continue with the development of the 2023 capital budget and the 10-year capital plan according to established timelines. Finally, the 2023 capital budget and the 10-year capital plan will be presented to Council on October 3rd and 6th. So that concludes my presentation. Mr. Eamon and I are happy to take any questions. As well, directors with capital projects are available to take questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. So as indicated, they're here to take questions. They're here to hear feedback, but unless there's actually a motion of council to adjust something, but that would be done in October. But they are willing to listen and take feedback at this time. Councillor Harris, you're first.
Don't have a question on anything on this plan. I see it as an kind of an iterative plan that we'll deal with in due course. My question was, can you refresh my memory in terms of if an individual councillor wants to bring forward a project that would ultimately impact the capital budget at some point in the future, how's the best way to deal with that? Do we bring that up in budget discussions, or is that something we'd bring forward in a notice of motion at some point in time to at least get... There may have been some analysis done in the past, I don't recall. But what's the best way for us to do that?
I've got Mr. Fleming.
Yeah, through your worship, you definitely can bring it up during budget. I would actually recommend doing a notice of motion, though, in advance, and then that gives us more advance notice with which to plan and do a bit of research on putting together an actual plan request for the item. So if council directs administration, and that's happened a few times over the last few years, where council will pass a motion saying direct administration to include something in the upcoming budget deliberations. And then we have a little bit of extra time to work on it. If you do it during budget, the time with which we can actually come back with information is quite limited.
Yeah, I'm not talking a mission critical project. I'm talking about something I'd like to at least insert into the process so that it's there for future consideration, discussion, and, justification at some point. There may have already done some work been done on this project in the past, and I lost track of it. So part of it would be, was an analysis done? What was the cost then, if so? And then how do we move it forward if that is ultimately a will of council?
Yeah, actually, if it's that's a good point. If it's a project that's not immediate, that you're looking for kind of final approval for 2023, then you could bring it up during the 2023 10-year capital plan, just saying direct administration to include it in a future year of some kind, and then that actually gives us a lot of time with which to do some research and work on it. So.
Yeah, that's just a clarification as to how we ultimately have a discrete way to talk about projects that aren't there yet that might become important for 10-year consideration.
Yeah, a resolution during the 10-year capital plan deliberations is a good way if it's not an urgent matter of sorts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. My first question, I'll try to phrase really simply, and maybe there's a very simple answer to it. How do we effectively budget with such an expansive horizon list? Should we maybe be doing that semi-annually based on changes with proposed projects that are coming forward? Would that be at all useful for your department, I guess?
Mr. Fleming.
Through worship, the horizon list is really meant to be just a tracking tool. I would sort of summarize it as So the idea with the horizon list is that there's this project out there. It's been talked about. It's been identified as being a potential need. Maybe it needs more work, or maybe it's something that's we've identified as being needed, but not necessarily within the 10-year window. So what would happen for something to move from the horizon list into the 10-year capital plan? That would essentially be something we do with council during the budget process. And that would be the point in time where you have to figure out, how is this thing going to be funded? Where does it fit into the big picture? What's the timing and things like that? So it's really been brought on as a bit of a tool so that we don't lose these things, but we're maybe not ready to have them in the 10-year capital plan yet.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate that that answer. And then my other question has to do with the DCC and retiring or redirecting the debt. So if the debt is retired, then it completely becomes removed from the property tax notice section. If it's redirected, then it will continue to remain on as with the ongoing projection of that figure on property tax assessments, just to be put into reserves. So I guess my question is, we're essentially, because your comments were that we are putting into reserve to negate raising property taxes in the future. So it essentially, does that not do the same thing if we're redirecting the debt to curb increased property tax rates?
Through your worship, I would like, the debt is retiring. The debt is completed. The question is, we can allow that to drop off the property tax, like the property taxes that the city collects. But when you look at the 10-year capital plan in the long term, this city, like all municipalities, has a lot of significant needs. We are doing work that may or may not change our decision around what to do with the DCC debt. So one example would be the study that's ongoing related to recreation amenities. We've also got a pretty significant study related to the neighborhood rehab program as examples. At the present time, we believe the neighborhood rehab program should probably be funded almost double to what it is today. Again, that may change pending the outcome of the study, but in a world where we're trying to find $4 million worth of ongoing capital funding, that funding source it could be useful to get us to that goal. So that's just one example. But
so I'd be correct in saying that currently it's administration's recommendation to redirect this retired debt payment.
Based on what we see today and based on what we know today, that would be. But again, we've got a couple significant studies and discussions with council coming up that may change that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blissard.
I was actually going to ask the same question, so I'll just kind of clarify. So when you're saying redirect, you're still going to have the line on our property taxes, only it'll have a different name? Or would you just remove that, but it become part of the regular budget? Because, I feel 20 years ago, we were all told it would be removed. So I think people are going to be looking for that not to be a line anymore.
So by redirecting it, there won't be a line on the tax notice, and that tax rate will just move up to the top and be part of the full residential rate and the non-residential rate.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
To follow up on the very last question, because I wanted to address it. Our operating budget and the cash flow that it generates covers things like transfers to reserves, but it also covers things like debenture payments. If the Dow Center is a separate line on our property tax invoice or bill to residents, then I would assume that that particular amount of cash does not form a part of our annual budget process or deliberations or dollar value in the budget.
That's correct. It's just part of the base budget.
How much is the annual payment on the
Dow Center?
I want to say it's about 1.9 million, but I have to double
Close enough.
check.
If 2 million, we're not exaggerating by too much. 2 million, that's what, 4% of our property tax bill?
Correct.
So by moving it up, we would be immediately increasing our property tax assessment by approximately 4% of the citizens.
No.
That's not possible, so you better explain.
Well, because it's already in the tax increase.
Pardon
It's
me?
already part of the tax increase. Maybe you got to rephrase your question.
Okay. It's not part of the tax increase because it's a separate line item on our property tax bill invoice, correct?
It is.
So we budget, and our property tax bylaw addresses the property tax to be raised to fund our budget. I would have thought all along, excluding the Dow debt, which is funded by that one single line on the property tax bill, much like Heartland Housing is a separate line on the tax bill and does not form a part of the city's budget.
No, that forms part of our budget. It's part of our $78 million budget.
Mr. Eamon, did you want to jump in? Just push your button.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Kelly. So on the tax bylaw right now, the DCC has its own tax rate, separate from the municipal tax rate, which funds the budget. So I think what we're saying is that if once the debenture is fully paid, that ongoing 1.9 would then be substituted with a transfer to reserves, which would become part of the overall property tax. So we eliminate that separate mill rate for the DCC debenture payment, and it would be included as part of the overall budget for property taxes.
Hey, I thank you, Jeremy. I need to understand completely. So let's go back to when we approve our operating budget, normally first meeting in December. We have budgeted, and the budget will show X dollars, $50 million to be raised by property taxes. You're telling us then that that $50 million to be raised by property taxes includes the Dow requisition.
Correct, but it's not really a requisition.
Okay, well, let's not quibble over my slang. So it includes the Dow payment.
It does.
For sure.
For sure.
So when the property tax bills and our property tax bylaw is passed, the bylaw adjusts the total we need to raise by property taxes, removes the Dow payment out of and treats it separately, and the other portion, the remaining portion, is what is assessed as property taxes, the net portion only.
Mr. Eamon?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I think without having the figures in front of me, I think you're correct in that it would be treated separately. And
Well, it has to be treated separately, or we're going to compound it when we move forward. So, and that's why I'm seeking the clarification, as it's never been made clear in our budget, and I've never thought to ask. It's never been an issue that's been raised. So we've never had a chance to talk about it. But maybe you could do council a favor, and if it's not inappropriate, could you just provide a 2-paragraph explanation of how that actually works so we can digest it at a later date? Thank you. I do have more questions, but I think I've taken quite a bit of time now, Mayor Catcher. Come back to me.
I'll come back to you. Yep. Okay, I'll inject myself in next. So I guess my first feedback or question would be, again, on the recommendation to redirect this. So I guess the question that I would have is, why would you not come in with the budget saying, okay, we are sitting at whatever percentage that we are. After we retire this debt, if we're to retire it, it would, if you said that last time we were going to be at like 4%, and this was equivalent to 4%, we would be at a 0% tax increase. So basically, we should, I guess the question that I'm saying is, why are you using those words? Because if it's retired, it's retired. You're asking for a new budget of whatever that is. So without trying to confuse the public and outrage them, could you please or be willing to change how you're talking about this, Mr. Fleming?
Yeah, through your worship, we will. This has been good. These questions, and we will take more time and put more care into how we actually frame the recommendation for sure.
Okay, and my only feedback on that is people are going to be outraged if all of a sudden they say, well, I've paid for this for 15 years or 25 years, and now you're telling me, oh, we're just moving the money over. So it's not really redirecting it, saying that we're asking for an additional 4% if that's the case.
Yeah, through your worship, that's a fair comment, and I think that's what we are essentially attempting to describe. But like I said, we'll take more care with the wording and how we frame it. Yeah.
And then my second questions or feedback come to Veterans Way, and I know you keep putting it back in, but when do you anticipate knowing the impact of the bridge twinning being positive or negative? So so there's the bridge twinning, there's potential provincial funding that's available. So have you been able to obtain any answers to any of these through any types of models?
Through worship, obviously we won't be able to. We've got models now that show what we think will happen when the bridge opens, and that forms part of the recommendation. I mean, obviously you don't know for sure until it opens, but we have modeling for that. With respect to provincial funding, at this point in time, we don't have anything secured beyond potentially the use of the MSI funds.
Okay, and I asked that question because it's in the top priorities for the IRTMP as far as lobbying the province. So I asked that question because why would we put it in if it's in there to try and get funding if we're not even lobbying for it?
Yeah, to your worship, I agree with you. This, if we do move forward with this timeline, then I would say it has to become an immediate advocacy priority for the city for sure.
Okay. And last question I'll ask if you can indulge me is, so we heard from Dow that they will make their announcement in hopefully the spring, and what kind of impact will that have?
So through your worship, the Dow construction actually is playing a major factor in how we're determining how to go forward with the Veterans Way corridor. If you look at the sort of the bulk of their construction, I think they had themselves pegged to be something 2026 to 2029. 25 to 26 was the peak. So really what we would recommend is either get in a little portion of it before their construction and finish it after, or defer the entire project until after they're done, which means you would essentially get to it in 2028, more than likely, or 2029, depending on when they finish.
Okay, and I'll have more questions too, so I will come back. Councillor Batoye?
Thank you for your presentation. My only comments about the retiring the Dow debts will be that if we're going to, whatever we do, let's just be transparent about it, right? I think that's important. And my question about interest rates. So you had mentioned in your package that interest rates are going to be rising by 0.5 to 0.75%. And my question is, how significant is this? Because when I look at the capital budget and I see that for 2023, we're looking at 27 million, and 24, we're looking at 43 million. And thinking about inflation rates, it gives me, it freaks me out a little bit, So how are we protecting ourselves from interest rate risk?
Right now, we're going to have to work through that interest rate risk. But the numbers that I quoted in the presentation were the ones that were given to us by the province in December. Today, I looked up, for example, just using the secondary water supply. We had recommended in the 2022 budget that would be debt funded. And when we did that, in the calculations for the 2022 budget, the interest rate was 2.519%. Today, when I looked at it to borrow the same amount of money, the same time frame, it was 4.69%.
Yes, so going back to the Veteran Way project, I know that council had taken that off from last year's budgets, and I'm just wondering, does it make sense to move certain projects to the future? And I just think that, well, if the inflation rates actually get better, is it better to do it now? It's just a decision we have to make and measure our risks and see where we want to fall. My other question was on those items that were crossed out. They're being moved to the horizon list. Are they going to make their way back here for the 2023 budget, or are they just going to remain there? Because I'm thinking, like with the West Rivers Edge, we approved the master's plan last year, right? Did we not?
Your Worship, we did not approve the River Valley Master Plan. A motion was put forward to return in the 23 budget with a request.
Okay. So based on that, then all of these projects may or may not come back. Okay. Yeah, that's all for now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you. You touched on it in your presentation that we're expecting a new development developer levy bylaw, development levy bylaw to come before council. Can you be a little clearer on the time frame? Because I think that discussion needs to happen before we get too deep into some of these budget items.
Through your Worship, the intent is to come to council with a revised levy bylaw in Q1 of 23. Okay. There are some servicing studies going on right now that will inform that bylaw.
Okay. Does our budget policy, require for at least significant capital inclusions on the capital plan, require life cycle budgets be prepared? Require.
To your worship, I'd have to look up the policy and see specifically what it says about that.
I'm not sure that it does. So whether it does or it doesn't, I'm looking at a couple of the significant ones, and they seem to be obvious. I'm sure the fire hall and the swimming, the swimming pool, whatever format it takes in the future. Somewhere early on in the whole program, talking about significant capital additions, it would make sense for the community to have a better understanding of the total cost. Over a 10 or a 20-year period, a fire hall, for instance, the cost of construction becomes pretty cheap when you look at the ongoing annual operating costs. So when do we talk about that stuff?
Talk about capital replacement or
talk about life cycle costing, operating budgets as well as capital budget.
To your worship, when council does have a significant capital project request, it is our practice to have operating costs included in that for information.
So we don't get that information till budget document day, November, whatever year.
When a capital project would come forward for approval in the sort of the current year's budget debate, discussions over operating impacts would be a part of that. There is some work, I believe, on the 10-year capital plan at the bottom. Ms. Andruko, I thought we project out property tax impacts, but I don't know if that's just capital or if that's operating as well.
So we still have a lot of work to do on the operating impacts. So that's not ready for today, but it will be available for October.
And I'm not being critical, but I am expressing some frustration. I understand it's a tremendous amount of work, but for an item such as the swimming pool that is 5 years or 4 years out, the draft operating budget for each year can be relatively vague and have few lines on it with some ballpark estimates of what it would cost. And as we move forward, that could be further defined. So at least 12 months or 24 months before we make a decision on something as significant as a swimming pool or a fire hall, the community should be well versed in what it actually is going to cost us to have such a facility.
Through your worship, with respect to those two projects, I think we're actually going to be in a pretty good spot. We've got a pretty significant piece of work underway related to aquatics and recreation facilities that is supposed to inform total costs, so that's capital and operating. It is our intention too that any discussion related to fire halls, obviously the operating costs of a fire hall compared to its capital are significant. And so I believe there's I lost it here, but on the 10-year capital plan, we don't go right into detailed design. There's a bit of a feasibility study that happens in the year before. And then if council decides to move forward, then you get into detailed design and construction. And it's through that initial feasibility study work that the intent should be that council knows the operating costs and the capital costs before they go on any kind of a project.
How far in advance of actually having it hit the council desk for a decision? That's my concern, Mr. Fleming. I don't want that information as a councillor 5 days before I sit in this council chamber. I think it should be discussed 4 or 5 months in advance so that the community has time to digest it. And I'd say that as a minimum.
Yeah, and to your worship, again, I think with these capital projects, the timing really sits in the hands of council. I mean, ideally, we would get that information to council as quickly as possible, but we shouldn't be getting ourselves into positions where we have to make decisions on major capital. We should be able to get the information and digest it and move forward in a timeline that's suitable for council and the community.
Thank you. I have further questions. Please come back.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to belabor my questions. Mine continue to come back to Veterans Way and the modeling on it. And I asked that question because when I look at it, the Yellowhead going into Edmonton is only 2 lanes until you get into Edmonton. And I just, is there going to be some new modeling done? Because I'm really struggling with this project, especially since the bridge is coming in.
Yeah, through your worship, like I said, we've had modeling done. It does project the usage of the highway before and after the bridge construction. I think it was believed that the bridge construction completion could actually increase the traffic flows through the city. So that's something we need to take into account. But what I can do is we can go back and summarize the modeling work that's been done so far. And again, I think that modeling work would be important for us. Like we would have Mr. Schaefer here and in the fall when we bring this back for discussion. So I agree with you. The modeling's got to be an important part of our consideration here.
Okay, and I'm not going to belabor that one. I'll belabor it in October. Councillor Kelly, you're back on. Last one.
Thank you. I think probably a very simple question. What is a smart intersection system?
I can try and explain it, but maybe Mr. Martins can explain that.
Anybody that's comfortable.
Can you push your button, please? Thank you.
Sorry, Your Worship, through the Councillor Kelly, the smart intersection system, in simple terms, it is to change the lights. So it allows our fire trucks so that we can proceed through on a green light. It gives advance notice to the intersection lights to change them to a green light so we can proceed through cautiously. And we're looking at doing this on the highway corridor. So this will hopefully help with response times.
I was hoping you would say that, and yes, hopefully it will help with response times because those are starting to become an issue. I understand.
Correct.
When will we know? Once it's installed, I guess.
Well, we're at the early stage of reviewing some other communities' modeling right now, and seeing what they've done, and then hopefully we'll have some numbers. If not, then we'll know further upon installation of what our actuals are based on our data.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
One last question, I think, Mayor Catcher. Now I have to find it for Pete's sake. Bear with me. Yes. In the metro area, Mr. Fleming, are you aware of any municipality that has expanded their levy bylaw to include things like fire halls?
Oh, through your worship, yes, but the name Yes, the city of good example. The city of Edmonton has. I believe through the levy, they fund 50% of the capital costs of the fire hall, and they've even included a few the cost of the trucks potentially.
And that leads me to the other question that I had in the 10-year capital budget. If we have a new fire hall being built out by year 5 of the plan, where's the budget for the equipment that goes inside that building?
And through your worship, this is a question for the fire chief, but my understanding is that there could be a combination of purchase and new, but there is an opportunity actually to move current equipment over. So we don't have to completely outfit it with the same equipment that we have in the current hall.
It would be nice to see that plan sometime in the next couple of years, I guess, as we get a little closer to that. Thank you. I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to do one more item and then I have been asked for a break. So we will move on to 6.1, public auction of land in tax arrears. Trish Norman and Jeremy Eamon. Thank you, Shannon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I am Trish Norman, Revenue Services Coordinator with the City, and here with me today is Jeremy Eamon, Chief Financial Officer. I'm here this afternoon to request Council's approval of reserve bids and conditions of sale for the properties that qualify for tax arrears public auction, as outlined in Schedule A to the Council report dated June 28, 2022, and that all costs associated with the tax recovery proceedings be applied to the tax roll of the related parcel of land. We also request that Council approve a motion to amend Schedule A to remove Lot 13, Block 34, Plan 1324773, as we received payment in full of the tax arrears balance just prior to today's meeting. The Municipal Government Act authorizes the tax recovery process for municipalities to recover unpaid amounts of taxes. Section 418(1) states that each municipality must offer for sale at public auction any parcel of land shown on its tax arrears list if the tax arrears are not paid. Section 419 states that Council must set a reserve bid that is as close as reasonably possible to the market value of the parcel and any conditions that apply to the sale. The market value of each parcel of land has been obtained through an established real estate appraisal firm with designated and licensed appraisers. As per Section 553 of the MGA, Council may add the costs associated with tax recovery proceedings related to the parcel to the appropriate tax roll. To date, the arrears remain outstanding on the properties, and as per the MGA, tax recovery proceedings continue until such time as payment in full of the tax arrears is received. Should full payment of the tax arrears be received for any of the properties prior to the time of auction, the parcel shall be removed from the public auction list. The public auction date has been set for September 13th, 2022. Subsequent to Council's decision, administration will proceed with the required advertising in the Alberta Gazette and the local newspaper. Administration recommends that Council approve reserve bids and conditions of sale for the properties that qualify for tax arrears public auction as outlined in amended Schedule A to the Council report dated June 28, 2022, and that all costs associated with the tax recovery proceedings be applied to the tax roll of the related parcel of land. We can now take any questions you may have.
Okay, just before we go on, I'm going to go to parliamentary. So I will go to Ms. Moulter for some advice before we go first. So you indicated to amend it, but typically at a council meeting, you would be able to distribute a paper report to us that would form a new Schedule A without having to amend it. So do we actually have to do that?
Your Worship and members of Council, this information happened right after the meeting had started, so there wasn't time to revise Schedule A. So it is recommended to do an amendment and then go to the original as amended, and the Schedule A will be updated and posted as amended tomorrow.
Okay, Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. All right, so we'll do clarifying questions first. Councillor Harris.
Ms. Norman, a couple of questions for clarification. So the establishment of the reserve bid is ultimately at market value. Is that through an actual property appraisal, as would be done by a member certified through the Appraisal Institute of Canada, as opposed to our assessor, who I believe has that qualification, but he functions as an assessor. So is that how we're establishing the reserve bid, an actual market appraisal?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, that is correct.
Okay, good. Second question is, respecting the fact that tax forfeiture, tax recovery is a iterative process and moves through space and time. If these properties don't sell, and it's very rare for them to sell at tax sale, they then move along the process of tax forfeiture, which ultimately, if they're not redeemed over a period of time, then ultimately the city can take title to them. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct.
And that is a couple of years down the road after the date of the tax sale, correct?
That's correct. The city does have a number of options with what they can choose from through the MGA with how to dispose of the property or transfer it to ownership of the city, etc.
So if it's not sold, the property owner can still have an opportunity to redeem their property through the payment of all of the accumulated taxes and penalties and whatever other charges have been added to the list. Is that correct?
Up until the time of tax sale, they have the opportunity to redeem the property. Post tax sale, if the property does not sell, I would have to get clarification on whether the property owner could still at that time redeem.
I believe they do continue as the titled owner, and ultimately I think that's probably the case, but that's fine. I was just asking for clarification because this is a mystified sort of thing for most people. They don't understand it. So thank you. So that's good. So now we're down to 2 properties on the tax sale list.
Through your worship, that is correct.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, questions?
Thank you. I think Councillor Harris addressed some of my questions. So very simple one. On the conditions of sale, there's a reference to the payment of GST. I assume you mean that the requirements of the excise tax as it relates to goods and services tax will be followed.
Through your worship, that is correct.
Because on a used residential property, there typically is no GST, for instance, unless the fees. Okay, thank you. One last, having a rough day, I'm forgetting my placeholder here. When this process starts, is there an obligation or a requirement for the municipality to register anything on title so that other lien holders could become aware that in fact this process has started?
Through your worship, yes, we do register a caveat on the land title to the property once a property is 2 years in arrears.
Okay.
In tax arrears, we go on title, and then all the other lien holders are notified at that time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Macon? Oh, shoot. Push your button again. Sure, that will be fine. There's nobody else, so go ahead. So we need an amending motion first.
Sure, I'll make the motion that council remove lot 13, block 34, plan 1324773 from Schedule A as attached to the council report dated June 28th, 2022.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to ask if there's any debate on this. I'm not anticipating. Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. What happens if the other properties, the other 2, come back subsequent and make payment? Is council going to have to amend this motion at a later date?
Through your worship, no, there will not a requirement for amending motion. If they pay before up to and including the date of auction.
Okay, so that gets me to the need for an amended motion tonight. We can pass this motion as it's read, and the city administration just does not act on the property that's paid their bill.
Through your worship, that technically, yes, we could do that.
Because I have a concern. And I mean no disrespect to anybody, but occasionally checks bounce. So have we actually confirmed that the cold hard cash is in our bank account before we move this property?
Through your worship, it was actually a cash payment that was made at City Hall.
$100 bills?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Did you report that to FinTrack?
Okay.
No, that's a legitimate requirement.
Without being able to disclose the amount of the payment that was made, it wouldn't be something that we need to require.
It's not reportable?
Correct.
I find that hard to believe on a $760,000 house. I'll think about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the motion. Okay, I'm going to close the motion for the amendment. Okay, so that is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried. You can proceed with the motion.
I'll make the motion that council approve reserve bids and conditions of sale for the properties that qualify for tax arrears public auction as outlined in Schedule A as amended to the council report dated June 28th, 2022, and that all costs associated with the tax recovery proceedings be applied to the tax roll of the related parcel of land.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Is there any further discussion and debate on the motion? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. I was asked for a comfort break, so we can be back in, we'll take 10 minutes, 4:31 if we can recess for 10 minutes. All right, thank you. So we are in recess. Okay, we will resume the meeting, and apologies to anybody who is watching online. We needed a few extra minutes, so better to take them now. But we will begin with the next item, which is Downtown Action Plan. We have Mark Morrissey and Aaron Bush Duncan. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mayor Catcher. As most of you are aware, we've been working on our Downtown Action Plan and a lot of the projects that are a part of that Downtown Action Plan. And I would like to go over a little bit about some of our progress on the Downtown Action Plan initiatives and recommendations, as well as go over some funding that we received and what our goals and plans are for that as well. So why downtown matters, it's something that we've brought before the council before, but we know that downtown is a place where our local independent businesses have congregated and have developed a community of support. It's a beautiful location with a lot of great public infrastructure like Legacy Park and access to the river valley and trail systems. Downtown is known as the heart of Fort Saskatchewan. It's a place where so many of us go for community events and holidays and celebrations. And the goal of our Downtown Action Plan and all of the projects and initiatives therein and things that we'll be talking about are ways to enhance and promote downtown and help it to grow into a place for the community to gather and a place where unique independent businesses don't just exist but thrive. As we've gone over before in our Downtown Action Plan, there are 5 initiatives and 23 recommendations. Our Downtown Action Plan, like I said, 5 initiatives and 23 recommendations, and there's a council-approved budget of a little over $280,000. One of those recommendations in the plan was to seek federal and provincial funding to support our efforts in revitalizing the downtown. In response to this recommendation, administration applied to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. The Canada Community Revitalization Fund is a 2-year, $500 million national infrastructure program to revitalize communities across Canada. And why we applied for this grant is because the priorities include revitalizing downtown cores and main streets, reinventing outdoor spaces, creating green infrastructure, and increasing the accessibility of community spaces. These are all some of the goals that are already incorporated in our Downtown Action Plan, and this was a great fit. Just going over our timeline a little bit, in January 2021 is when Council adopted the Municipal Development Plan that included a short-term project for the Downtown Strategic Action Plan. Then in July of 2021, Council approved the Downtown Action Plan and allocated $282,200 from the Economic Development Reserve for its implementation. And in that plan, one of the recommendations was to seek funding opportunities from the provincial and federal governments to support the development and promotion of downtown branding and programming. Then in September of 2021, administration applied to Prairie Scan for funding through that Canada Community Revitalization Fund. I'll be referring to that as CCRF. And then in March of 2022, administration received notice that the application to partially fund some of those specific downtown projects was approved in the amount of $97,000. Administration is recommending that we use the Canada Community Revitalization Fund grant in the amount of $97,000 to increase the Downtown Action Plan budget. Existing funding approved by Council would remain the same. So to be clear, we're not asking for additional funding above what was approved last year by Council. We're simply asking that the additional funding we received in that grant be used to enhance and expand the projects of the Downtown Action Plan. And I'll be going over both our proposal for the enhanced and expanded projects, as well as a quick update on some of our active projects currently. So with our proposed enhanced and expanded projects, one would be to expand the 100th Avenue Lights project. Another would be enhancements to the 102nd Street Parklet, additional murals in downtown, as well as some new downtown signage. So one of our projects that's actually currently underway are the installation of 100th Avenue, or our lights installed on 100th Avenue, trunk wrapped along the trees. And one of the things that we would be asking that we could use this expanded funding for would be to increase kind of that scope and the length of this project. So instead of only being the 2 blocks on either side kind of City Hall from 101st Street to 103rd Street, we're proposing that we extend that all the way to 104th Street. Most of these will be white lights, but there will be some LED color changing lights that will be changed for holidays, major events, and to show support for specific causes. This will improve the ambiance and extend the experience to additional businesses in downtown. So on the old Miller's site, and right next to it, it's a city-owned kind of green space. That's where the Olive the Sheep statue is, and the old Miller site. And one of our expanded projects would be to add landscaping, additional outdoor dining tables, a shade structure, and to screen the adjacent parking lot to create a space for the community to gather. It would be a space where people could bring takeout food from our local restaurants, and it's also a space that some of the organizations downtown could use to program. Something else that I'm quite passionate about is public art. I think it really beautifies the space. And so part of this kind of enhancing and expanding the scope of the Downtown Action Plan would be to increase our planned murals from 1 to 2 or 3, depending on budget. And why I can't give an exact number of murals is because it kind of depends on each space, how large the space is, you know, the height, those kinds of things. There's a lot of pieces in that, but our goal would be to bring several murals into the downtown with those expanded funds. And one of the last things that we're hoping to bring in to this kind of enhanced and expanded Downtown Action Plan project budget would be some additional downtown signage. This is something that is in response to some of the desires of our businesses. It's something that we've heard multiple times, and it's something that would really benefit the downtown businesses and community. So we're doing all this great work downtown. It'd be a great way for us to bring people in to experience all the work that we're doing. Let's see. Sorry, just one moment. I want to make sure I'm catching everything. We would look into creative options, possibly options that could respond to the seasons or specific initiatives and events downtown. And like I said, we're doing all this work downtown. The businesses are doing a lot of work. Our stakeholders are doing a lot of work, and we sure want to make sure people know how to find us and enjoy everything that we've got going on. And now for a quick update on some of our active projects that we have going on downtown. In addition to the development incentives that have been before council recently, we have a few other active projects that I'd like to go over. One of which is the 100th Avenue lights that are currently being installed. Another is the pop-up park on 100th Avenue, as well as a downtown brand visual identity and website campaign that we have going on as well right now. So with our 100th Avenue lights, this project consists of year-round lights that are trunk wrapped on the trees on 100th Avenue. The installation is actually in process, and most will be complete for Canada Day. These lights help to create an experience and a special atmosphere for our visitors to downtown. They also create a bit of a visual path between Legacy Park into the core of downtown. For the active projects update, or real quick, I'll go back to this. You'll notice that one of these pictures has some really fun colored lights. These will be installed in certain select areas. One would be kind of near the trees in front of City Hall, and one would be near the entrance to 100th Avenue from Legacy Park. And these would be able to be those colored lights that could be programmed for different holidays or special events or initiatives. Another project that is currently underway is this 100th Avenue Parklet. So you can see a map here of where it's located. It is on the corner of 100th Avenue and 102nd Street. It's located across the street from City Hall on a block that has 5 existing restaurants and several more within a 2-block radius. This parklet will consist of planters and tables, and all tables added to the parklets will have QR codes that direct people to the new downtown website where restaurant menus and local business information will be located to encourage people to pick up takeout and enjoy the downtown streetscape. As you might have noticed currently, there are Adirondack chairs there as we wait for the picnic tables to arrive and for our website to be completed. There are 2 major goals we're hoping to reach with the parklets. One is to provide visible, useful places for people to gather and experience downtown. And a second is to provide options for people to grab takeout from our local restaurants and dine al fresco, benefiting both our visitors and our local restaurant businesses in the process. Something else that we have in process and is coming soon that we're pretty excited about would be the new downtown brand visual identity and website. As I mentioned before, there's a lot going on downtown, and we need to be able to promote and market the businesses and events downtown. This downtown branding and marketing campaign started out with a findings summary and goals assessment, and will include a new logo, brand, messaging, and marketing campaign, as well as a new website to promote downtown. The new website will have a calendar of upcoming events in downtown, and by that I mean not just the large Legacy Park events, but could also include library events, special events at local businesses like live music or holiday sales, as well as a list of downtown restaurant menus and a list and brief description of some of the other downtown businesses, as well as a section to plan your visit to downtown. A spot that has links to local activities, downtown points of interest like the Fort Precinct and Library, as well as the history of the area. In the future, if the Public Art and Murals program grows, there's an opportunity for us to showcase those programs as well. An RFQ was done for this project, and a local company was the selected candidate. This is in progress as we speak. So coming back to why we're here today, we're proposing that we use the funds from the Canada Community Revitalization Fund in the amount of $97,000 to increase the Downtown Action Plan budget. We're not asking for additional funding above what was approved last year by Council. We're simply asking that the additional funding we received from the CCRF grant be used to enhance and expand the Downtown Action Plan projects. I'd happily answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, so I'll get everybody in line. Councillor Abatoye, you're first.
Thank you for your presentation. I actually was in that area yesterday, and the business owner had actually really commended the lights on 100 Avenue, and she thought it was really beautiful. So my question is the plan for the lights to be on every night, or what's the plan on that part of the program?
Through your worship to Council Abatoye, the lights would be on every single night, year-round. They are currently set as dusk to dawn, and so they will be a way to kind of brighten and make it such a beautiful space to experience kind of even in our long winters.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's nice to hear that feedback already. So well done. My second question is on the pop-up park. And I actually heard from a business owner in that area that was really concerned about taking up parking space, that's already really limited by that. I mean, it's a brilliant idea, but did we... it seems like we are blocking out parking. So I'm wondering, have we engaged with business owners in that area and gotten feedback on what they think?
Through your worship to Council Abatoye, we have worked with some of the local businesses and talked about this proposal. Especially the restaurants are really excited about the idea of having an outdoor space to allow people to eat outside. I've talked with several of the businesses, and they initially, somebody asked me, what's the plan for the reduced parking? At this time, we're not noticing a significant lack of parking or challenge there. And I would like to, or I will say, the plan is we will finish this this parklet, and then we will see, and we will be kind of engaging with those businesses to see if it really is creating an issue or if it's just a concern that they have but haven't noticed yet. So,
just to add to that, Your Worship, through to Councillor Batoy, this is a seasonal venture, so these will be removed in the fall. They won't be there year round. And these are based on input from the business community in the area itself when we did the consultation prior to drafting the action plan.
Right. So did you, like again, I think it's a brilliant idea, but did we consider putting it on, like, because that walkway is quite wide, right? Putting it on the walk rather than actually blocking the parking area?
I'll let Aaron address in terms of what the plan itself was. We have looked at multiple options as to where this can go. We've also looked at options where it can go should we be required to move it. But when we look at what other municipalities have done, major centers, Edmonton, Montreal, and even small towns, a lot of them have taken, in fact, we've gone out to the center line of the street with these types of things. So it's not unusual to see. We understand that businesses may have concerns with a loss of parking. We will be talking to them at length, particularly after the project is done. If this continues to be an issue, we can address.
Just don't go to the center of the streets.
No, not recommending.
But just my final question, if that's okay. So you talk about a new website, and I know you guys already have like one. I know you have Invest for Task and the other website. So is this going to be a standalone website? Is it going to be a landing page on an existing website? What exactly is the plan?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, this would be I think they're called a sub-site of the city's website.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So it's not a standalone. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
Well, thanks for your presentation. I think Councillor Abatoye hit on some of my questions. I'm going to go a little bit further. So this pop-up park on 100 Ave, I assume you're going to monitor it for usage? I mean, you got a picture here. I saw bikes, so there's people there. So it must have been during the day, but the seats are all empty.
It is something I walk downtown every single day, so kind of been keeping my eye out, and I did see some people there on Saturday, which was really wonderful, and it's something we'll definitely be watching, and we'll also be talking with the businesses in the area. Are they seeing people use the space? Are they seeing it kind of adding to that vibrance and activity that we want to see downtown? So I think that engagement with our local businesses would be very important here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind the idea, but it does seem to take up parking. And I know in other cities that I've walked through, when they have, I don't know if you call them parks, but they tend to have more like a patio in the sidewalk that wouldn't be done by the city. A city gave them permission, so a little different. Anyways, we'll see what happens. The website, next one that was already mentioned too. So who maintains and updates this website? Because when you're talking about businesses having information, concerts coming in some of the businesses, music or whatever, who's going to do that?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, we have been working with the company that's been selected for the project, and they have explained that there are different types of submission forms to make it really easy for the businesses to submit their information, and then it would just be an approval process by someone in economic development.
So, but a business will maintain it, so outside of the fort, the website itself. Like who's maintaining the website? Is it our IT department in the end?
Through your worship, no, it would be us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you would do it yourself. Okay. And I have one more, or do you want? Okay. And the budget request that you had for 287, whatever the number was, that was a one-time. That wasn't like an annual that you get it next year again.
Through your worship, I'll speak to this one since it was approved prior to Aaron coming on. The request was a one-time request from council to be funded through the Economic Development Reserve.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you for your presentation, guys. I don't have any problem with this grant being used in the way that you are proposing. I'm just curious, listening to the projects that you've got going on and what is happening down there, and particularly where this pop-up park got placed. Where in the plan are we expanding funding to enhance the other streets downtown? Because for me, you know, we've put a lot of money into this one road and the lights are being expanded on this one road. And now the pop-up park is on the same road. So I'm just wondering, where do we see some of this money that we've put forward actually going to enhance 101 and 102, 103, 104 to make downtown not just one street?
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, I think there's an opportunity with the murals to reach out past just 100th Avenue, and then the secondary parklet on 102nd Street is about a block away, but that's something that we can take under advisement as well.
Just to add to that, through your worship, 100th Avenue was intended to be the focus, as it's the gateway into downtown, particularly from Legacy Park, which is identified by a number of kind of downtown stakeholders as that being the major thoroughfare, particularly whether it be the Farmers Market or Legacy Park Family Festival or the River Valley itself, that to kind of enhance that connection and that inviting atmosphere through 101st into the downtown itself. So that's why 101st was kind of pegged to be the focal point, and then we would expand out from there.
Through your worship, if I could add to the economic development team, 104th Ave will be going through neighborhood rehab this year, and I believe 103rd Street is also planned for neighborhood rehab next year. So those areas will see some revitalizations through that program.
You're good. Okay, thank you. I've put myself in next in line. So that was one of the questions that I did have, is what was happening with the other streets, because 100th Avenue already is the premier street, so that's asked and answered, I guess. So the next question that I have is on the signs. When you talk about them, are they actually going to be out on the highway to direct people in? Because our beautiful Explore Fort Saskatchewan, they're already here when they see them. So where are these signs going to go?
Through your worship, when we are looking at the signs, it's something that we are only in the very beginning phases. We are working with the team that is working on our marketing and messaging plan, and that is something that's included in that plan. So we'll be working with them on the best ways to bring people into downtown. It's something we're in the beginning phases.
Okay. And hopefully you will update us on that as you move forward. The second one that I have is the 102nd Street parklet with the structure there. So you said you're going to try and block the parking behind. Is that going to be a structure that you can see through? And I'm only asking because of safety, because we'd taken down a fence before from people hiding behind it.
Your worship, with the screening, it would be just to kind of reduce that immediate visibility and to create kind of a more intimate space. I do not imagine it would be anything that would be opaque to allow someone to hide behind. We would want to make sure that there were no additional safety concerns.
Okay, thank you. Just something to keep in mind. And last question that I have is just on the murals. I anticipate that you will try and reach out to businesses to maybe partner with you or to get something more than just 100th Avenue.
Yes, the intent of the murals is to reach out. We would need to work with the property owners, obviously, and to create some of those agreements, and it would be to brighten and enhance a larger portion of downtown and not just one street. Correct.
Okay, and I gave your email address out yesterday, so hopefully they got in touch with you. All right, Councillor Harris.
The picture you have on the screen right now of the little parklet, I went over and looked at it before I came into the meeting, and it looks like they're losing, about 2 parking spaces?
Correct.
And downtown, we have a surplus of parking. Is that a fair assessment?
That would be my understanding.
And so the loss of 2 parking spots on that is not considered to be a major impediment?
Through your to Councillor Harris, our indications would be no.
Thank you.
We have studies done through our colleagues with planning and development that indicate there are no significant concerns with parking downtown at the moment.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that. The other question I had, and it goes to the other parklet Councillor, the mayor made reference to on 102nd Street. So she raised a question about blocking. So would a step-dad analysis be done on anything like this to ensure that when I say step-dad, that's crime prevention through environmental design or crime reduction, whatever. So does that happen either formally or informally when we do these sorts of projects?
Your Worship, to the Councillor Harris, at a minimum, it would be informally. We would ensure that those criteria are applied into what consideration we place. I don't know that a formal assessment would be necessary given the nature of it, but obviously we would apply those criteria.
It's in the background in relation to the planning and the implementation is what you're assuring Council. Good.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen, questions?
Yeah, thanks for the detailed presentation. It's really good to see how plans for the downtown are shaping up here. My question just has to do with the website that's being planned around the downtown and maybe looking for an elaboration on the design and the utility and also the budget for this website. Obviously, Council allocated funds for our downtown action plan, community revitalization, but websites can cost quite a bit of money. Probably most of the businesses downtown have their own website, QR codes that they can access menus to restaurants, so on and so forth. And I think sometimes, like social media can be more effective than a website where somebody has to type in, a URL just from, a trending aspect of that. So can you just walk me through the process for this website, how much it costs, what really the function of it is specifically, and what kind of support that you've garnered for this website from businesses?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, the intent of having a single QR code on the tables to direct to a website is so that if you have a visitor coming in and they kind of sit down, instead of having to know what restaurants they should be looking at or what restaurants might be in the area, they can go to kind of a one-stop shop and see, oh, look, here's 5 on this block, here's, 10 in the downtown that are all within walking distance. So it's to make it as easy of a process for them to engage with their local businesses as possible. The QR code, it's not going to be something where, each menu is fully listed. I'm imagining, and it's something that we're in discussions with, but it would link to their websites as well. So it would be a way for them to be promoted.
Just to add on, Councillor, with respect to your question on budget, when the RFQ was issued, the responses came in and a provider was selected and was actually under what we had originally assessed as a budget as approved by Council. So we're quite pleased with that amount.
Yeah, good to know. Thanks. And maybe just further to what you were mentioning about different businesses. So you would say we're supporting local businesses through this QR code, but there maybe could be some issues that arose from other businesses just outside the downtown core that want to be listed on this website. Do you think that it might be beneficial to include maybe a wider scope of services instead of just the downtown through this website? And that would be something maybe more beneficial to Fort Saskatchewan as a whole?
Your Worship, to the Councillor Nguyen, it is something we can consider, whether a part of the downtown action plan or part of a business retention and support initiative of the department. So it's something we can take away and take a look at.
Yeah, for the future, yeah. And your QR code, by the way, that you have on the slides takes you to a completely non-affiliated website. You might want to check that. I wasn't sure if that was just a screenshot or not.
Okay.
Through your Worship, no, the actual website is not live yet. So
no, it has not been created yet.
All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions. So what is the wish of council? A motion? Push your button. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Abatoye.
1 second. I'll make a motion that council authorize the Canada Community Revitalization Fund grants in an amount of $97,000 to be allocated to the Downtown Action Plan funding.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. First of all, I think that's the work that has been done so far is pretty impressive. As I said, I spoke to a business owner yesterday that just raved about the lights being, on the streets being on. I think this funding, which was approved for this purpose, makes sense, for the work to continue, so we can continue to see more engagement now downtown. So thank you and kudos to you guys.
Okay, thank you. It's now open for discussion and debate. Councillor Kelly, you're first.
Thank you. I didn't have any questions. Your report was great. particular heels of the report on the survey that we had an hour before. So thumbs up, you guys. I'll support the motion. I think it makes infinite sense. Everybody's mentioned the lights. I've seen them in other locales. They're excellent. It's an excellent idea. Hopefully they remain unvandalized and respected, and everybody gets a chance to enjoy them for years to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen, discussion and debate.
Yeah, very happy to support this motion. It's a grant that is definitely going to be useful for your department. I look forward to seeing the results of it, and congratulations on following through and receiving that grant. So,
okay, thank you, Councillor Harris.
I'll support the resolution as well. I think imitation is the best form of flattery, and so what we're doing downtown in terms of the parklets, for example, is a good form of imitation. I was up in Jasper last week, and what the town of Jasper has done is they've put huge jersey barriers in front of restaurant businesses on Main Street and on the back side street. And it protects the people that are using the roadway as a sidewalk, but it's ugly as sin. So the parklet, whether this is the final design or infrastructure we use, is infinitely more attractive than that. That's just functional. So I guess as we evolve going forward on that, it'll be interesting to see how you evolve the plans and the infrastructure that we use. But I support it. I think it makes infinite sense, and I think it's going to be a positive move for our downtown.
Great, thank you. I'll support the motion as well. It's nice to see the lights finally going on. I think it's only been like 10 years, because maybe longer than that. It's when the trees were put in. Somebody had a vision for lights, and so it's finally happening. So kudos to you that the 5,000 that we put in 10 years ago is finally getting spent. With regards to the parking, I just want to make a comment on that, because we all sit here and yes, there's comments both sides, but when 100th Avenue was revitalized and these big nodes were put in, the businesses had concerns because it actually took out 2 parking stalls on each of the blocks because of these bulbs. So that was a concern that they had at that time. So there was a bit of a surprise to a couple of the business owners when this parklet went in, because the sidewalks were actually widened in order for businesses to put out some little tables and things like that, especially where the bakery is. There's a huge area over there that they have, and in the past there has been. And I guess the other comment, and it's not criticism, but it's only been a few years ago that our planning department came to us and said, gee, we want it to change the parking for downtown and require the businesses to have more parking. And because I think it's like 80-20 right now, and they said, no, we need to increase the parking for the businesses. And council said, no. You know, we felt the parking was adequate. So, you know, sometimes when these things evolve over time and you've sat on council for a while, we give our head a shake and say, okay, we hear one thing, we say no to it, and then something else evolves out of it. Very pleased to see what's happening, but I'm sort of on the same mindset as Councillor Macon had said. 103rd Street, 104th Street, they need the attention too. And when you came to us with the grant application, the picture that you showed us was 103rd Street saying, you know, it needs work. So I really hope that as we go forward, if there is a revitalization done down there, that there's actually money that's included for that. So, you know, having institutional memory of these things, sometimes that's why questions are asked. But, you know, it is my hope that we can continue to revitalize downtown, but see the vacant lots actually get sold or utilized. And I know there's some land use planning that may need to happen with that too, that we maybe have to change some of the requirements. So I'll say good job for now. A couple surprises. We don't like to be blindsided, and we will wait to hear what people and the businesses have to say about those. But looking forward to seeing some results. Councillor Abatoye on close. Can you push your button? Nothing further on close. Motion is now closed for the $97,000 to be allocated to the Downtown Action Plan funding. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item we have is 6.3, Transfer Station and Ecostation operating hours. Sadie Miller and Richard Gagnon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. My name is Sadie Miller, Waste Program Supervisor, and with me I have Richard Gagnon, Director of Public Works. We're here to provide Council with revised operating hours for the Transfer and Ecostation, for which we will bring forward a recommendation for Council's consideration. On August 24th, 2021, Council approved a change in hours for the Transfer and Recycle Station with a goal of providing evening access to users. Since September 30th, 2021, the station has been open from noon to 8 p.m. every Tuesday and Wednesday, while the rest of the week remained 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Administration began collecting detailed site traffic data in December of 2021 to help assess the overall effectiveness of our operating hours. This graph shows the average number of users entering the site in 2-hour increments between December 2021 and May 2022. The first 2 hours of opening on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so from noon to 2 p.m., have the highest number of users with an average of 32 vehicles. The last 2 hours on Tuesdays and Wednesdays have the lowest number of users, with an average of 3 vehicles using the site between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The rest of the week, including weekends, experience fairly stable traffic volumes. There is a distinct peak in traffic on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when the station opens later. This increased demand for earlier access has also been observed in front of the station gate before the site opens at noon. Vehicles waiting to use the transfer and recycling station queue on the road and in nearby parking lots, which has caused accessibility and visibility issues along this section of 111 Street. These accessibility and visibility issues have not been experienced to the same degree on days when the site opens at 9 a.m. In light of this information, administration is proposing revising the operating hours to be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Wednesdays during the spring and summer seasons only. The remainder of the week during summer, and for 7 days a week in the winter, the site would be open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Changing hours on a seasonal basis allows for later disposal of yard waste materials during the week without restricting site access in the morning when overall user demand is higher. So for most city facilities, council approval is not required to set the operating hours. However, council did set the hours for the transfer and recycling station when the August 24th, 2021 motion was passed. Administration is recommending that council rescind the August 24th resolution. If this recommended motion is passed today, administration will implement the proposed operating hours and continue to monitor site usage and refine the operating hours as needed. That concludes my presentation, and I welcome questions.
I'll open it up for questions. Clarifying questions, please. Councillor Harris.
Ms. Miller, obviously the station site is still under development and construction, and it will be for some time to come. So do you anticipate that the utilization of the site, when it's finished, when the amenities that are there for people to come and use, to drop off, to do whatever they will effectively change the use of the site in terms of the visitation? Obviously, people still will always have stuff to drop off, but do we anticipate that the smoothness or efficiency of the site as it's been designed will actually improve the throughput better?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, absolutely. The site is designed much better. Traffic flow will be a lot easier. The purpose of the request to change hours or the proposal to change hours is simply to accommodate user demand. We see more people wanting to access the site in the morning than in the evening.
Okay, so that's just a factor. One last question. Why do we use the 24-hour clock in the report? I struggle. I have to do a mental recalculation. What's 70? I know 1800 is, I think it might be 6. I don't know, but why do we use 24-hour clock?
I cannot answer that, but there is a reason why I was saying 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. rather than the 24-hour clock in my presentation. I as well get confused.
Yeah, thank you. And for future reference, it would make it much easier for this poor counselor to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Catcher. If nobody else wants, I'll be pleased to make this motion. I spoke out rather loudly for the extended hours last year. If the data doesn't support it, the data simply doesn't support it.
Okay, I'll just leave your microphone on for a moment. Councillor Abatoye is logged in, so I'll see if she has any questions.
Yes, question. Thank you, Sadie. So these new hours were implemented starting September 30th. So what did that look like between September 30th and November 30th? Were they pretty similar as the data we have here?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, the short answer is yes, we did still see a large influx of people coming in at noon. The reason that the October and November data is not presented to you today, I admit that we went through a little bit of trial and error in terms of getting the that 2-hour time frame in. We were monitoring in 4-hour increments and it just wasn't enough detail. Okay. So we do have data for October and November, but it's not detailed enough to really provide a recommendation. So.
Okay, and I mean, the data you've presented supports, what you're proposing, so it definitely makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have one quick question. So if it gets passed, is it effective immediately?
Your worship, it will be effective 2 weeks from tomorrow. So I believe the 3rd Wednesday in July is when the hours will officially change. And that is to accommodate the collective agreement scheduling requirements.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Noyan, you have a question?
Sorry, yeah,
just a second. Okay, go ahead.
So just for clarification then, so we rescind this motion and then any changes to the operating hours with the current or future transfer station will not be coming in front of council. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Noyan, that is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Kelly, go ahead. You may make the motion.
Yes, thank you. I move that council rescind R213-21, the council direct administration to implement option 1. And it goes on for 2 hours a week as described in August 24, 2021 transfer recycling station operating hours council report.
Thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Not really. I honestly, personally, I spoke in favor of having the evening hours. I know I go there fairly frequently after 5 o'clock, but obviously I'm one of the very few. So if the data doesn't support the wage costs, it just doesn't. And I've been told by the operators over there, and maybe they know I'm responsible for the motion, I don't know. But I've been hit up on more than one occasion about the traffic jam on the street in the morning. So I'd like to avoid that as well the next time I hit the transfer station. I think it makes sense. I appreciate the data. That's the big thing. It made it obvious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just leave your mic on for any further discussion and debate. I'm just going to say thank you to administration for recognizing that a change was needed. I always say it's really important that, your transfer station people or your staff know what goes on. And I think that was a question that we asked before, what the impact was going to be. So thank you for not waiting. And I know there's somebody who wants to say I told you so over here, but she hasn't buzzed in, so that's all. Councillor Kelly, anything on close?
Who wants to say I told you so? Well, we don't all have the same wisdom and foresight. So I'm nothing further.
Thank you. So the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sadie and Richard. We'll move right along to sale of remnant road right-of-way. Janelle Smith-Dugan. Oh, is okay. We got Mr. Morrissey back.
Thank you, Your Worship. After planning's kept this chair for quite a while in the beginning of the year, I figured you'd want a little break. So I will endeavor to be quite quick. There we go. So, Your Worship, my name is Mark Morrissey. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Fort Saskatchewan. The remnant road right-of-ways in question that we're referring to are shown in blue on the screen. They are approximately 4.42 acres. The city has owned these for quite some time, but as they no longer align with the city's road network, it's been determined that they can be disposed of. Administration has received an offer to purchase these lands, which we've reviewed. Terms and conditions of the sale have been determined. The city's legal team at Brownlee LLP has drafted a draft sale agreement, and administration is recommending the lands be sold as per the report presented to council in camera on June 14th, 2022. The recommended motion is on your screen, and I am happy to entertain any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Morrissey? Not seeing any. I will take a motion. Councillor Harris.
I would move that council direct administration to proceed with the sale of 4.42 acres of city land legally described as Plan 0820100 Block 1 Lot 1 as per the report presented in camera at the June 14th, 2022 regular council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak in favor?
I will vote in favor. Obviously, I think we understand the necessity of selling this property. I think it incorporates into the development of that area, and I'm glad we're moving forward in that direction.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion and debate? Not seeing any. Anything on close?
Nothing.
Motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item we have is Council Remuneration and Expenses Procedure, GOV-009C Amendment. Ms. Moulter.
Your Worship and members of Council, the Council Remuneration and Expenses Policy Gov-009-C is presented today to request a couple of amendments. Those amendments are to Section 7.5, which increases the number of days for submitting expense claims from 5 to 15, which is consistent with the actual processes that are ongoing. The second amendment is to Section 9.3A, and that is amended to state that the compensation for mileage is reflective of federal rates rather than provincial rates. Clayton Northey is attending virtually. Should there be any questions for either him or I? And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Would somebody like to put a motion on? Councillor Noyan, would you like to put a motion? Or Councillor Blizzard, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that council adopt council remuneration and expense procedure GOV-009-C.
Thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of it?
I'm in favor of it, just cleaning it up a little bit, I think.
Okay, thank you. Anything on discussion and debate? Councillor Harris?
I understand the change of the time for submitting an expense claim, but obviously if council forgets to submit something, and other than at year end when there are closes and things like that, I can't imagine that there would be a problem with that. This is just a guideline, in other words.
Your worship, to Councillor Harris, that is correct. This is just the 15-day period is a little more reflective of the average submission for claims.
Yeah, so has council in the past, and has this current council been pretty good in terms of getting their expense claims in on
I think for the most part, there are times where we might receive a late one or two, but for the most part, yes.
Well, I would suggest administration is pretty good at reminding us when they need the claim. So I really thank administration for their forbearance in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard, anything on close? Thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item that we have is strategic plan adoption. John Dance to present.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. My name is John Dance. I am the General Manager of Corporate Services and very pleased to present today the City's 2023 to 2026 Strategic Plan for Council's consideration and adoption. Council had previously met on April the 28th for purposes of strategic planning, and the document before you is reflective of that session, as well as ongoing organizational projects and public engagement that was undertaken in February and March of 2022. The public engagement was used to help understand what the community values and where they would like the city to focus their efforts over the next 4 years. My City, My Say saw 1,686 responses. The strategic plan follows a 4-year cycle and provides direction, sets priorities, focuses resource allocation, and addresses issues facing the city now and into the future. It also serves as the foundation on which department business plans and studies, and budgets are developed. Within the strategic plan goals are higher order objectives that lead us towards the city's vision. The goals emphasize specific areas of focus and are not comprehensive of all we do, but highlight where focus is required. Of the 5 strategic plan goals, 4 are similar to the current strategic plan, and 1 new goal has been added by Council, focusing on the environment and climate change readiness. Strategic plan initiatives within each of the 5 goals are higher level directional actions that move us toward the achievement of that goal. Each goal has 7 to 10 strategic initiatives. There are 44 initiatives within the 5 goals. Administration reports on the strategic initiatives as part of the triannual reports and also closely tracks those within the corporate work plan. At the front end of the document, the strategic plan also includes the city's established vision statement, mission, values, guiding principles, and land acknowledgement. Provided as an appendix within the strategic plan is the city's established priority-based budgeting results. PBB results are long-term and reflect what the city is in business to achieve and are specific to Fort Saskatchewan. In addition to both the community and governance results is the environmental resiliency and climate change readiness result as discussed by Council in their April session. The strategic plan document itself is provided as the attachment. It is content only, and following Council's approval, additional graphic design will be incorporated, and departments will also update their department business plans for 2023 to 26 period once the plan is approved. Concludes my presentation, and the recommended motion is before you and can respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, John. I like everything about it. I think it reads well. I only had one question. It has been the subject of some discussion throughout the last year or two on council. Page 83 of our package, which starts with operational excellence and continuous improvement, and then under strategic initiatives, the last bullet point. So the last bullet point on page 83 of our package, it references continued focus on department service level documentation and development of performance measures to inform program delivery and support continuous improvement. I really like that. How can I expect as a councillor to see that realized? How are you going to report back to council, or if not you, somebody on a department by department basis to make me feel that this is actually being done?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I very will likely be the person to report back to you. If I'll go at the first one, the service level. We undertook those last year. I think each department established some pretty comprehensive service level documentation as a result of council's service level policy. I think with anything of this nature, it is very much iterative, and I think we need to continually look at those, review, and refine them as we work through them. So they are established, they're on the website for the public and for council's availability, but I think we just need to continually look at them and refine them. Performance measures have been on my list for some time, and it is something that I have committed to in late 2022 and 23. I think we have some really good things in place. It's formalizing them as well as including them as part of the annual or the triannual process. So both of them are my responsibilities, and I would expect to be back to council in 22 and 23 with updates.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question for you. When you're doing the design of it, rather than cogs and wheels, are you going to make it feel like a sense of place for what we're asking for? Because the last one I think had just cogs and wheels.
Through your worship, yes, Wendy's will continue to work over. She's obviously leaving us, but she did pass along comments about the cogs and wheels.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Nguyen.
For motion,
yeah,
no
go
questions,
ahead.
yeah. So I'll move that council adopt the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan as attached as Appendix A to the council report dated June 28th, 2022.
Great. Would you like to speak in favor since you are our newest council member that hasn't sat here before?
Yeah, absolutely. Will do. I think that there's been some great discussion as a group, and thank everyone who's been involved in crafting this document. I thank you, John, for bringing this in like Councillor Kelly mentioned, a simplistic and easy reading fashion. I think it's a extremely important guiding document for the future and the overarching plan for our city, and look forward to its implementation and seeing what comes of the work that we put in, the vision that we all have for the city.
All right, thank you. Anything on discussion and debate? Not seeing anything on close? You're good. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Dance, for all your work on that. And leadership team. It took a real team to get it done. Next item that we have, bylaws. 7.1, bylaw C23-22 to close a portion of road allowance for River Lot 15, first reading. Taryn and Cherie presenting. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I am Terrence Hammer, and I'm here to present Bylaw C-2322 that closes a portion of road right-of-way south of River Lot 15. The road right-of-way to be closed is located south of Highway 21 and north of the South Fort neighborhood. This road closure application was initiated by the city. The application will close a portion of vacant road right-of-way. The road closure area is approximately 0.76 hectares. The road right-of-way is currently undeveloped and is used for walking, providing legal access to a privately owned parcel, and accommodating shallow utilities. The purpose of the road closure is to consolidate with adjacent city-owned parcels, which will increase the lot size and improve developability and marketability of these lands. Bylaw C-2322 would close the road right-of-way as seen in blue and be consolidated with the city-owned parcels as seen in red. The closed road right-of-way will be zoned as urban reserve. Should council give first reading to the bylaw, a public hearing will be advertised as per the requirements of the Municipal Government Act. Landowners within 100 meters of the property have been mailed a notice. A copy of the proposed bylaw is available on the city's website. The advertisement has been placed in the Fort Saskatchewan Record, and the target date for the public hearing is July 5th, 2022. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. I'll go into questions first. Councillor Harris.
Looking at Appendix A, your tentative plan, ultimately it's still showing Lot 1 and Lot 2 as discrete entities, which we would likely be in a position to sell or dispose of at some point in time. The unused road allowance still ends up as a third remnant. Is that a correct interpretation on this map? Or are you suggesting that those two existing lots through subdivision in the past and this road allowance becomes one block that we would conceivably dispose of?
Yeah, that's correct. So what we're trying to do, and this was information given to us from Alberta Land Titles, was to consolidate all three together into one new lot block. It'll have its own lot block plan, and then from there you would just say close the portion of road within this new consolidated legal description.
So it'll come back with its own legal description at some point in time following consolidation.
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Harris, that's
Good,
correct.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, and this is probably a yes or no question. So we've had interest from developers to develop commercial property or potential commercial property that the city now owns on both sides of Highway 21. I did notice driving by that there's also, I think, about 11 acres for sale adjacent to what this new block will be. Have any developers been in contact with your department potentially interested in developing a greater area in this geographical region?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, not in contact with planning and development. I believe economic development may have received inquiries.
Okay, interesting. I think it'd be interesting to know. It doesn't really pertain to this exact topic.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
2 points just so I can learn something tonight. And this isn't important, but can somebody tell me what a river lot is? And if you can't, no worries, I can Google it.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I can try. So this is basically the remnant of the lot that would be running from the river. It came all the way here. The development happened, the lot was subdivided, and the development in Pineview happened. The highway was developed. So this is just the remnant parcel of the original river lot.
This is the last surviving piece of that river lot?
That's how I understand it.
Okay, after 200 or 150 years. All right. Beside the two parcels in question or marked on my aerial map as 1156, Lot 1 and Lot 2, there is a lot 3 and a lot 4. Are they owned by the city as well?
To your worship, Councillor Kelly, that's correct. Yes.
Then why? Okay, we're just talking about the road allowance here. That's the only reason those two lots are highlighted in red is because the blue road allowance borders on them?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would somebody like to put a motion? Oh, Councillor Abatoye.
Quick question. Just to clarify, Taryn, did you say that a notice has been mailed out to property owners in the area?
Through your worship, Councillor Abertoy, yes. So because public hearing, usually we give 2 weeks notice, but because public hearing is next week, we actually gave notice a week early.
So if council didn't approve this, then what would happen?
To your worship, Councillor Abertoy, I'm not too sure.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoy, it doesn't matter. We won't give out the next notice or next newspaper advertisement.
Okay, but you already informed the property owners in this area.
Yes, but if the second and third reading doesn't go through, the land sale doesn't happen. So
interesting.
Through your worship, we would issue clarifying notifications.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Would somebody like to put a motion on? Go ahead, Councillor Kelly, or Councillor Harris beat you to that.
Oh, I would defer to Councillor Kelly.
Okay, just somebody choose. Go ahead, Councillor Kelly. Go ahead then. Oh, sorry. Okay.
In that light, I would just like to ask council if my fellow councillors would consider going back to the rotation plan we had when we were when we were in e-meetings or remote meetings. I fail to see the need to have the chair ask for somebody to make a motion each and every time we have one. The rotation was good. You can always decline. Having said that, now I'll move on. It's something that crossed my mind. Let me get to the page. Lord. Okay, I move that council give first reading to bylaws C 23-22 to close a portion of River Lot 15 Government Road right of way and further that a public hearing be scheduled.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this isn't the first time council has talked about this. I thought we'd already had first reading. Had I been offered a test on this, I would have failed, obviously. So it only makes sense. The road allowance is a fragment that will be completely useless if it's not developed in conformity with the adjacent lots. So I think it makes sense, and I think we should get on with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with regards, we can always talk about the rotation, but I try and make sure everybody gets a motion that's put on. It's just polite and procedural. So with that, anything on discussion and debate? Not seeing anything. Councillor Kelly on close. Oh.
Nothing to add, and I wasn't trying to suggest that it was unreasonable, Mayor Katcher, just simpler to have a rotation, that's all. And nothing to add on close.
Okay, thank you. Motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any notice of motions this evening? Seeing none. Are there any points of interest? Seeing none. Any councillor inquiries? Okay, seeing none. No, the meeting, not going to that one, thank you. I will need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Noyen.
I move that council enter in camera according to FOIP.
Thank you. Close the question. Those in favor, please cast. Oh, just raise your hand if you are. You can just raise your hand. Okay, that is carried unanimously. We are moving in camera. Thank you.